Hey, Dr. J here with Spartan Coaching. I'm here with a follow-up video to the article I wrote about running strong, building a strong foundation first before getting into a running program. In the first section of that article, I talked about mobility and lengthening tissue or deactivating tissue. And a great way to do that is with self-myofascial release. And what I have here with me is just a couple of different foam rollers. So this is kind of the typical foam roller. This second one here is basically just a PVC pipe wrapped in some foam, and then it has some knobs on it that allow it to get a little bit deeper into the tissue. And then this is just another roller PVC pipe with some foam kind of wrapped around it. Now the benefit to these is they're a little bit harder and a little bit more durable, last longer than something like this type of foam roll. Over time this gets kind of compressed and softens up a little bit. And then in some cases, some people might even, instead of using a foam roller, might go with something like a small medicine ball. What a medicine ball does is just concentrates the pressure in one area and allows it to get a little bit deeper into the tissue. So if you're new to foam rolling or self-myofascial release, something like this is a good place to start. A little bit forgiving, not quite as concentrated with the pressure, and then once you kind of get comfortable with it, you can kind of move up to something that's a little firmer or something that has a little bit more concentrated force. And even some people, when they get really comfortable with it, they might move up to, this is a trigger point therapy ball. Has a little bit of give to it, but it's a much smaller ball than a medicine ball, so the force would be very concentrated. So if they would use something, some people use something like this, or they might even use like a lacrosse ball. So anyway, so let's just get into some of the techniques here. I'm just going to quickly show you on my right leg, but obviously you would do it on both sides. First up, we'll work on the calf here. So I just kind of have the foam roller placed midway up my lower leg, and then the key is to keep the leg relaxed. And because as you're rolling out the tissue, if it's contracting, it's going to tighten up, and then the foam rolling is not going to do its work. So as you do this, you want to try to concentrate on being relaxed. So it helps to breathe a little bit. So take some deep breaths through the nose and then breathe out through the mouth. All right, relax. All right, and then what I'm going to do, then I'm going to support my body with my arms. Okay, I'm going to lift my hips off of the floor, and so now most of my weight is just supported by my lower leg. Okay, so you're just going to roll back and forth, okay, across the tissue. And as you do this, you're going to find there's some spots there that are a little bit sensitive. Like here's one right here. I'm just going to pause for a second and just kind of gently, slowly roll back and forth over that. I might pause and just hold it on it. A little bit of discomfort there, and I'll just hold it until that discomfort kind of dissipates. Okay, so usually when you hit those trigger points, it causes a little bit of pain, and then sometimes it causes the muscle to contract. So hold it long enough for that discomfort to subside. So continue to roll, along the whole length of the lower leg. Right, you might have to readjust yourself and kind of move around a little bit on the foam roller. But also what I want you to do is to kind of roll over to the side. So externally rotate your leg and work on the outside of your lower leg. Here we're hitting the peroneal group. Okay, and again, you find those sensitive spots, usually up here towards the top. That's a nice spot for me. Just gently roll back and forth on it and hold it. Okay, and then I'm going to internally rotate it. I position my hips a little bit different. Okay, work on the inside here. Now hitting the medial head of the gastrocnemius and the soleus a little bit, looking for those sensitive spots. Kind of hold it there. Okay, so that's quick. I would ideally roll back and forth for 30 seconds on each position, and when I hold it on those sensitive trigger point areas, I might actually hold that for an additional 30 seconds. So overall, to do the whole lower leg, it might take me 2 or 3 minutes to complete that. Okay, so now we're going to move up the leg. We're going to move up to the hamstring. So I'm just going to Kind of position the roller halfway up my thigh. Okay, same position as with the calf. I'm going to kind of lift my hips off the ground, supporting myself with my arm. And again, just trying to keep the right leg nice and relaxed. And I'm going to roll up and down my thigh. Okay, looking for those sensitive areas. Again, I might roll my thigh to the right. Okay, this way, I'm hitting, hamstrings from a different area. I'm also getting a little bit of the IT band, but we're going to work on that specifically when we get to the front of the thigh. Okay, and then I can also rotate the thigh to the inside. Okay, all right, and if I roll it up really high, right, I can get a little bit into the groin. Okay, and if I go up high into the hip, I can get into a little bit of the glute as well. Okay, from this position, you can also, if I support myself, get this under me, support myself, cross over my leg, and I kind of lean into this hip a little bit. Now I can start working on the glutes a little bit more, and I can also find the piriformis. Just roll a little bit deeper here. There it is. Find that sensitive spot, just roll on it for a couple of seconds, hold it. Okay, wait for the tension to kind of subside. Okay, so that's the hamstring, the glutes, and the piriformis. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to flip over on my stomach and we're going to work on, I'm going to do the left thigh. Okay, so I want to get the foam roller about halfway up my thigh. Okay, and again, I'm just going to rock gently back and forth, rolling the roller up and down the thigh. I find that sensitive spot. I'm just going to hold it for a second. Good. Now, if I wanted to get the hip flexor, I roll way down. Okay, and this one, the hip flexors are pretty deep, so you want to get a little bit more pressure on this. So I'm kind of really rolling towards my left hip and putting a lot of pressure on it, looking for those trigger points. Okay, so to hit my IT band, I'm gonna do my right leg, but so to hit the IT band, it's gonna have to get over on our side. I'm gonna get this foam roller about perpendicular to the body. And just going to gently roll up and down it. I will roll up and down it from my hip all the way down to my knee. This one can be pretty sensitive. Here's a sensitive spot right here. Just going to hold it. Okay, move down a little bit. Okay. Try to stay relaxed. This IT band's a little bit painful right now, so I'm trying to stay relaxed, but there we go. Okay, we're going to hit the thoracic spine, so get this foam roller somewhere in the middle of our thoracic spine. Right, thoracic spine is basically from the rib cage up to the back of your shoulders. Okay, so now I'm just going to lift my hips. I like to keep my hands relaxed down by my side. I find if I move them up by my head or try to cross them on my chest, it creates some tension in the upper back. So rather either just keep them down my side or just nice and relaxed on my stomach here. I'm just rolling up and down the thoracic spine, all the way up to my shoulder blades and back down to my last rib, looking for those sensitive areas and just pausing and holding it on those areas. Right, and then last but not least, we're going to do some myofascial release on the bottom of my foot. So I have two things here. One, I have the mini roller from Trigger Point Therapy, and then I have their ball as well. The roller just works just like a foam roller would. It's a little bit firmer, but I put some pressure on it, and what I'm doing is just running it the length of my foot. Again, looking for those sensitive areas. I kind of rotate my lower leg a little bit so I can kind of get in the arch, and I might rotate it to the outside, so now I can get on the outside of the foot as well. Okay, Do the same thing with the ball. Difference with the ball is you can go a little bit back and forth on it. Kind of roll it in a circular motion. Really looking for those sensitive areas. You can also do this with a lacrosse ball or a golf ball too. If you really need to get deep into the foot and really break up some adhesions that might be in the plantar fascia, a golf ball is a pretty good choice as well. Alright, so now we're going to move on to some stability exercises. In particular, these exercises focus mostly on the hip area. So the first one is called the clamshell. This works on the glutes, gluteus minimus and the gluteus medius. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to flex my knees and my hips to about 45 degrees. They're nice and stacked. My hip is pointing straight up at the ceiling, and my feet stay in contact with one another. I have my arm out by my side, and what I'm going to do is just kind of relax my head by resting on my upper arm. And now all I'm going to do is just abduct and slightly externally rotate my left thigh. I bring it up until my knee is at about the same level as the hip, okay, and then back down. Now this seems like a pretty simple exercise, but you're going to do somewhere in the range of 100 repetitions of this. So at first you won't need any resistance, but over time, as you develop some endurance in those glutes, you might actually put some resistance bands around your thighs to add a little bit of resistance to it. Okay. So the next up is donkey kicks, and so we're going to get in kind of baby crawl position. What we want to do is have the shoulders kind of nice and relaxed, shoulder blades pinch back just a little bit, and our head is just kind of looking at the ground 3 feet in front of us. And then a donkey kick is just straight back, right? And kind of squeeze. Really, these exercises are really for the glutes and stabilizing the glutes, so you really want to concentrate on using those muscles. And what you want to concentrate on is trying not to rotate the hips. What you don't want to do is try, in an effort to try to get the leg up higher, is to rotate the hips to the opposite side. So it's just straight back, keep the hips square. Okay. All right, next up we're going to do the one-legged balance. So one-legged balance, just as it sounds, just going to balance on one leg. So lifting the opposite leg just a couple of inches off of the ground. And what you want to focus on is keeping the hips nice and level and the shoulders level as well. What you want to try to avoid is shifting all of your weight over to the supporting leg. So it helps if you do this in front of a mirror so that you can actually see your alignment as you're doing the exercise. So to give yourself a little bit more of a challenge too, what you can do is just move your leg around. You can move it into abduction, you can move it up into flexion, you can go into extension. Just what that does is just throws off your center of gravity, forces the muscles to kind of work a little bit harder to maintain that stability and that integrity. Okay. So next up we have the hip hike. I'm going to do the hip hike on an AirX pad. You could do it on a small step, or you could just do it from the floor. Either way, basically still works the same muscles. The difference is going to be the range of motion. So the muscles that we're targeting here is the quadratus lumborum. So the quadratus lumborum works in conjunction with the glutes on the contralateral side. So if you can think about it, you have muscles that run from the outside of the ilium down to the femur. When those contract, it stabilizes the right side. And then on the left side, they have the quadratus lumborum that runs from the lumbar vertebrae to the inside of the ilium. So they kind of, those pull up, and then the glutes will be pulling down to stabilize the pelvis, keeping it nice and level. So what I'm going to do here is I just step on the AirX pad, and then I just hike the hip up. Just pulling that hip up towards the spine. I keep this leg straight. It's a real subtle movement, not a huge range of motion. Okay, but it works a very important muscle in stabilizing the spine. Right, and then last but not least, we're going to do the single-legged deadlift. So this one, a pretty advanced exercise, requires some balance, requires good range of motion in the hips as well to be able to do it to its fullest extent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to balance on my left leg. I lift up my right leg and I extend my right arm. And I'm going to just think about my pelvis as if there's an axis or a rod kind of going through it. And I'm just going to rotate forward. I'm going to keep the left leg straight, the right arm straight, and the right leg straight. And I'm just going to rotate on that hip. And I'm going to go down as far as I can in maintaining that balance. Okay. So as you rotate forward, obviously center of gravity is being offset, so a lot more work being done by the stabilizers of the left hip, but at the same time it lengthens the hamstrings and it also strengthens the hamstrings. So again, just a nice tall posture here. I'm going to work on the left leg. I'm going to balance there. Right arm is extended, right foot is off of the floor, and I'm just going to rotate forward, okay, as far as I can. Okay, and as I'm doing this, if you look at me from the side, you know, if I'm doing this perfectly, my arm down my torso and my leg would make a perfectly straight line throughout the movement. So that should be something that you work on. I'm not sure if I'll be able to maintain that, but that's something that you should strive towards. So that wraps it up. That's some mobility exercises and stability exercises. That's great for runners. In particular, I think it's a good place for somebody who's just getting into running to start. You know, before we start building up a lot of mileage, perform some of these exercises daily and really build that foundation of fitness so that when we do start adding up the miles, that we don't get those overuse injuries. Obviously, if you know, if we're sidelined by for 3 weeks with plantar fasciitis or IT band syndrome or patellofemoral syndrome, you know, obviously that's going to hurt our fitness. So, you know, take the time, spend about 15 minutes doing these exercises, and it could save you a lot of time in the long run. So, so that's it for today. Talk to you soon.